It's 2024 and teenagers are still obsessing over a shoe brand that their grandparents could have worn. A brand that's been around since 1966 isn't just surviving, it's thriving. But here's what's really wild. The company that now dominates youth culture started by selling shoes to the elderly, but somewhere along the way, Vans cracked the code on something most brands spend millions trying to figure out, which is how to build a cult following that spans generations. Today, we're breaking down exactly how they did it. Let's start in 1966. In a small store in Anaheim, California, the Van Doren family opens a shoe store with a weird business model. They make the shoes right there in the store. Their first day is almost comically bad. They sell 12 pairs of shoes, but don't even have enough cash to even give people change. They have to ask customers to come back the next day to pay. This was just about business, kind of. The Van Dorens aren't trying to be cool. They're just trying to make good, durable shoes. Their first customers aren't skaters or musicians or artists. They're regular people looking for comfortable work shoes, not exactly the rebellious image Van has today. What happens next is where the real story begins. Local skateboarders start buying their shoes, but instead of just taking their money and moving on, Vans does something that would change everything. They started listening to these kids. See, in the early 70s, something starts happening in Southern California. Skateboarders began showing up at Vans stores, but not for the reasons you might think. They're not drawn in by marketing or special skate features. They're discovering something about Vans shoes that even Vans hadn't realized. These skaters found that the rubber waffle sole, originally designed just to make the shoes more durable, had an unexpected quality. It gripped the skateboard like nothing else on the market. The same pattern that was supposed to help the shoes last longer was giving skaters unprecedented board control. But then they started asking for specific changes to make the shoes better for skating. They wanted more padding around the ankle. They needed better arc support for landing tricks. They asked for different colors and patterns to match their style. And this is where Vans did something remarkable. Something that would change not just their company, but the entire concept of how brands could interact with their customers. They handed over the reins when Tony Alva and Stacy Peralta, two teenagers who would later become legends in skateboarding, walked into a Vans store with ideals for the perfect skate shoe. Vans didn't just listen. They brought these kids into the design process. The result was the era, a shoe that became the blueprint for every skate shoe that followed. But it wasn't just about the shoes. Vans started showing up at skate spots, learning the culture from the inside. They sponsored local competitions when skateboarding was still seen as a nuisance, not a sport. They were one of the first companies to actually pay skateboarders, giving them a legitimate way to earn money doing what they love. For anyone out there listening, researching your target audience is crucial. If you don't know who your customers are, you'll hit a dead end. And a lot of people overlook this process when creating a brand. And this is crucial to understand for Vans. Vans wasn't trying to exploit skateboarding growing popularity. They were investing in the community before there was any real money in it. When Paul Van Doren's son, Steve, started attending skate events with a mobile shoe store in his van, he wasn't just selling shoes. He was building relationships, learning what skaters needed, feeding that information back into the company. Knowing your community builds a deeper relationship that most people just won't be able to replicate. The customization that had been part of Vans' business model since day one took on new meaning. Skaters would come in with specific color combinations, unique patterns, and custom modifications. Vans would make it happen, often creating one-of-a-kind shoes that reflected each skater's personal style. This led to one of the most iconic moments in sneaker history. Skaters had started drawing checkerboard patterns on their white rubber sidewalls of their Vans. Instead of trying to stop this customization, Vans turned it into an official design. The checkerboard slip-on wasn't created in a marketing meeting. It came directly from what customers were already doing with their shoes. The impact of this approach went far beyond just selling more shoes. By letting their customers influence everything from design to marketing, Vans created a feedback loop that kept them relevant. What I want you all to understand is they weren't trying to predict what would be cool next. They were simply just letting their community show them.
All right, serious question. I love sneakers, right? But After a while, some sneakers sometimes would get too expensive for me. I can't justify $250 pair of sneakers. But now Vans will never do you wrong. Let me tell you right now, get you a Vans LX pair. Authentics, old schools, even the skate high. I'm telling you right now, the Vans LX, look how they sit right now. Look at this. Look at the fit. Come on, now you see the blue? Look at that. I'm telling y'all right now, Vans LX where it's at.
This strategy paid off in ways nobody could have predicted. When Sean Penn wore checkerboard slip-ons in the Fast Time in 1982, it wasn't because of a product placement deal. He chose to wear them because they were authentically what a Southern California teenager would wear at the time. The result in explosion of popularity wasn't manufactured, it was organic. So Vans had cracked the code with skaters. Their shoes were flying off the shelves, and they decided to do what almost every successful company does, which is get greedy. And this is where things get really interesting, because Vans nearly destroyed everything they've built. By the early 1980s, Vans was riding high. The checkboard slip-ons were everywhere, especially thanks to the Fast Times at Richmond High. Sales were booming, and the company made a decision that seemed logical at the time but nearly killed them. They tried to become everything to everyone. Here's what happened. In 1982, Vans started manufacturing shoes for every conceivable activity. Running shoes, basketball shoes, even casual dress shoes. They went from making a few core models to churning out dozens of different styles. They expanded their product line from about 20 styles to over 70 in just a couple of years. They were trying to compete with giants like Nike and Adidas at their own game. Vans was spending millions on new manufacturing equipment, new factories, and new materials, all while trying to maintain their original business. Look at the numbers. By 1984, Vans had racked up over $12 million in debt. That's about $35 million in today's money. They were losing money on every new product line they launched. The company that started by selling shoes directly to customers was now drowning in inventory they couldn't move. In June 1984, Vans filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. It was a humbling moment for a company that had been on top of the world just 2 years earlier. But this is where the story gets good, because what Vans did next is a masterclass in brand recovery. Paul Van Doren, who had stepped back from day-to-day operations, came out of semi-retirement to take control, and he did something remarkable. He told everyone the brutal truth. He gathered all the employees and said they might not get a raise for 3 years. They will need to cut back on everything except the quality of their shoes. But most importantly, he made a decision that would save the company. Vans would go back to what made them special in the first place. They shut down all the new product lines. They stopped trying to compete with the athletic shoe giants. Instead, they refocused on their core products, the simple, durable shoes that skaters and other authenticity seekers customers had fallen in love with. The recovery wasn't instant, obviously, but it was remarkable. By 1987, just 3 years after filing for bankruptcy, Vans had paid back every penny they owed. Not just the principal, but 100 cents on every dollar of interest too. What really happened? Simple. Instead of trying to expand into new markets by copying what other companies were doing, they started expanding by applying their community-based approach to new cultures. They started sponsoring music events, leading to the Vans Warped Tour. They embraced surf culture, snowboarding, and BMX. They collaborated with artists from local creators to major names like Supreme and Karl Lagerfeld. But here's the key. They never just slapped their logo on something and called it a day. They became part of each community they entered. They realized that authentic growth doesn't come from chasing trends or trying to appeal to everyone. It comes from finding genuine connections with different communities while staying true to your core identity. This approach led to some of their most successful expansions. The Volt by Vans line, launched in 2003, brought their classic styles to the high fashion world. The Syndicate line gave underground artists and cultural rebels a platform to showcase their work. But in each case, Vans maintained their authenticity by letting these new communities influence their products rather than trying to dictate what these communities should want. This ideal of returning to the roots is what has kept Vans as the great shoe brand it is today. It's incredible what going back to the past can do in marketing, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Let's identify what the foundation of the Vans brand is. Do you know why it's such a monumental task, keeping the brand relevant since 1966? That's almost 60 years. And for affordable shoes, that's nearly impossible. I mean, many brands maintain their presence in the market precisely because of exclusivity. But Vans, most of their shoes go for $50 to $75, way cheaper than big names like Adidas and Nike. Even so, they've got a 6.1% market share in the US, and 21% of Americans wear Vans. A big chunk of that is kids and teens. And it's because Vans has nailed two huge trends right now, which is athleisure and the love for all things vintage and retro. Honestly, I bet 99% of people wearing Vans don't even know how to ride a skateboard, and that's the magic. They didn't just box themselves into just that crowd. These days, we wear athletic stuff for everything, and with Vans, you get that plus the cool, laid-back Californian vibe everyone loves. Mix that with the retro fashion trends that keep coming back strong, and you've got the reason why Vans work so well. And we can sum it all up in one clear vision. Authenticity. Almost 60 years, and they never lost their authenticity. How? By following 3 key strategies that any brand can learn from. Take note. First, the community first approach. Van never enters a new market or subculture without first building genuine connections. Sponsor events, they say okay, but let's become part of the community first. When they entered the music scene, they didn't just slap their logo onto concerts. They created platforms for emerging artists and kept ticket prices affordable, just as they shoes. Second, the custom connection. Remember that early ability to customize shoes? Vans turned this into a core part of their identity. They had this program for customizing your shoes. You could see it right on their website, and it says, quote, "A tradition since 1966, the creativity is still in your hands. Pick your Vans and make them yours." So yeah, it's about giving people the tools to express themselves. It's about keeping a tradition alive. It's about letting the customer become part of that 60-year-long tradition. This strategy created a personal connection with customers that goes beyond just selling products. And third, there's the authenticity balance. Their most impressive feature was Vans managed to grow globally while keeping their credibility with core customers. And how did they accomplish that? By maintaining what they call an open to everyone but not for everyone approach. They don't try to please everyone, and that's exactly why so many people love them. But now we could get to the real interesting part. Something that just shows how seriously Vans take this community-based approach. In 2019, they did something that seems small but is actually revolutionary. They hired their first brand historian. I mean, I know a lot of you might be asking, what is that? Well, it's a new role, very important role if you're a brand with a specific established line. They hired Catherine Acosta as their first ever brand historian and archivist. Now, most companies might see a brand historian as someone who just catalogs old photos and preserves vintage products, but Vans saw something different, an opportunity to mine their own history for gold. Let me show you how this plays out in real life. When Acosta started digging through Vans archives, she discovered something fascinating. Back in the 70s and 80s, Vans had created needlepoint kits for their customers. People would buy these kits to customize their shoes with intricate handmade designs. The marketing team had completely forgotten about this program, but Acosta saw its significance immediately. This discovery led to the Anaheim factory needlepoint authentic collection, which connected Vans to an entirely new audience. The campaign resonated with people interested in crafting do-it-yourself culture and personal expression through art. It opened up conversations about creativity that went well beyond skateboarding and street culture. Every time Acosta uncovers these forgotten stories, she gives Vans new ways to connect with different communities authentically. The needlepoint story, for example, revealed how Vans had empowered women's creativity decades ago, long before it was trendy for brands to focus on female empowerment. The really clever part, though, is these historical discoveries help Vans expand their appeal without alienating their core audience. When they launch collections inspired by these archive findings, they're not pivoting away from their identity. They're revealing different facets of who they've always been. This has helped with the confidence to pursue unexpected partnerships while staying true to their heritage. She's helping Vans understand their own DNA and expand into new markets authentically. Acosta describes her role as bringing lesser known and marginalized stories to the forefront of the brand. Before her work, Vans marketing often defaulted to skateboarding stories. While skating remains central to their identity, she's uncovered countless other threads in the brand's fabric that resonates with different audiences. For the marketing team, these historic insights are pure pure gold. Every campaign can now tap into authentic stories from Vans' past. Remember how I said they was focused on building a community? Well, this strategy allows them to do exactly that. Instead of asking, how can we appeal to this new market? They ask, what authentic connections already exist in our history with this community? This approach keeps them from making the same mistakes they made in the 80s when they tried to be everything to everyone. This brings us to the present, where Vans is teaching a masterclass in modern marketing. The first lesson is about authenticity. Real authenticity isn't about telling people you're authentic, or organic, or unique. It's about actually being part of the communities you're trying to reach. The second lesson is about growth. Vans shows us that you don't have to choose between staying true to your roots and reaching new audiences. You just have to find authentic connections with each new community you enter. The third lesson is about history. Again, by understanding and celebrating their own history, Vans constantly finds new ways to be relevant to different audiences while maintaining their core identity. This is what makes Vans' approach so relevant today. They've solved the biggest challenge in modern marketing, which is how to stay authentic while growing. They've done it by treating their brand as a living culture rather than just a product line. Here's what it all comes down to. In a world where most brands are trying to manufacture authenticity through clever marketing campaigns and influencer partnerships, Vans is doing something different. They're letting their history, the community, and their customers speak for themselves. So how do you take these lessons from a 60-year-old company and apply them to your brand new business? Just look at what Vans really did. They paid attention to a small group of customers who started using their products in unexpected ways. For your business, this means watching how your early customers actually use what you're selling, not how you think they should use it. Listen to your people. It doesn't matter if it's just one person or 100. Make them part of what you're about and start building that community. You don't need millions of dollars or decades of history to do this. You just need to pay attention and be willing to let your customers show you what your brand could become. Because sometimes, like a small shoe company in Cali that was once discovered, your customers might understand your product's potential even better than you do. Because in the last half of 2024, going into 2025, teenagers are still lining up to buy shoes from a company that's older than their parents. That's not just good marketing, that's cultural staying power. And in a world where brands come and go faster than ever, that might be the most impressive trick Vans has ever pulled off. YouTube says if you like this video, you should definitely check this one out next. This is Lee from No Studios. Till next time, I'm out here.